Hello, thank you for joining us today for our webinar on cybersecurity for local governments. My name is Tom Glover and I'm CEO of Pineland Cogenus. Briefly, here's what we're going to talk about today. First, the number one security threat to your organization that antivirus, firewalls, and other security protocols can't protect against. Second, did you realize that the FDIC does not protect against bank fraud? Many business owners think their bank will protect them if hackers siphon money out. This is not the case, and most banks need immediate notification to get the funds back. Individual consumers have much greater protection. Then we're going to talk about why firewalls and antivirus software are absolutely useless against the new threats that are happening today. And finally, we'll look at how mobile phones and cloud applications are seriously jeopardizing your organization's security and data protection, and what you need to do to protect yourself. Ultimately, we're going to show you how to avoid being a sitting duck to cyber criminals and protect everything that you work so hard to achieve. If you hang around to the end of the presentation, we'll also give you a free dark web scan for your personal credentials and employee credentials. This is valued at $499. So stick around to get your scan. Okay, so who the heck is Tom Glover and why do you want to listen to me today? I'm a veteran IT professional who's worked in various industries throughout the country and abroad, solving really tough IT problems for over 37 years. I specialize in working in complex environments with multiple location, remote workers, or compliance mandates. Basically, all of the aspects that each of you have within your organization today. Pineland Cogenus has offices in Milledgeville, Metter, Vidalia, and Atlanta, covering the entire state and up into North Carolina, South Carolina, down into the edge of Florida, and over into Alabama and Louisiana. Currently, we provide support and cybersecurity services to 8 county governments, 9 city governments, and 5 state authorities. So we understand a lot of the struggles that you as a local government leader face today. Previously, we worked with Bahamas Ministries of Immigration and Foreign Affairs with systems in every Bahamas port and airport, as well as every foreign embassy and consulate worldwide. But enough of what I've got to say about Pineland Cogenus. Let's take a look at what some of our existing customers have to say about us and our support. This quote from Linda Cook, the Putnam County Finance Director, says, Pineland Cogenus has given me a peace of mind knowing that our computers are protected and being monitored. They have quick response time to the problems that we need help with. There's no more waiting several days before the issue is addressed, which was the issue I had with the other IT companies. Having someone watching your system, knowing it's backed up and protected, and having a company on call that knows and understands your system is vital. Next, we have Jeanette Anderson from Washington County. We are so appreciative of the prompt, courteous service my office receives from Pineland Cogenus. Pineland Cogenus has been our IT service provider for almost 5 years now, and it has truly been a pleasure dealing with their staff. They're professional, extremely knowledgeable, and friendly. Response time when I have an issue or question is super quick. I truly believe I would be hard-pressed to find another IT company with as many customer-oriented attributes as Pineland Cogenus. Our primary technician goes above and beyond to make sure we, the customer, are completely satisfied. He is always willing to explain things to one who is not as computer literate without making them feel inferior or incapable. And finally, we hear from Chris Hutchins, a county consultant who works with counties as an interim administrator. Chris had to say, I have had the pleasure of working with Pineland Cogenus as a county administrator or interim administrator in Washington and Twiggs counties. In both cases, the county needed to improve its IT capabilities very quickly. Pineland Cogenus has a capable staff and uses smart implementation strategies to meet this goal. Also, their ongoing maintenance support is excellent and timely. The Pineland Cogenus team also very much understands the budget limitations of county governments and are very reasonable to make improvements. As an interim administrator, counties are often looking for me to help them make quick differences, and Pineland Cogenus is always a great resource to call Over the last year, there have been significant increases in the sophistication, frequency, and severity of cybercrime attacks against local governments, which I'll be covering in a minute. Because of this, we've been watching these trends and putting in place new technologies, protocols, and services to protect our clients. However, many of the things that worked even 3 years ago are no longer effective. Plus, the attacks are becoming more frequent, more vicious, and carrying much bigger consequences. This is why we're talking to you today. This is a very real and very serious threat that is escalating. And we're urgently contacting all local government agencies to get this information into their hands. As we've all seen in the news, local governments make very attractive targets. Publicly acknowledged cyber attacks against state and local governments grew by 39% in 2018. There have already been 23 confirmed attacks in 2019 as well. Internet-delivered government services are a main reason that attackers go for local governments because they can cause mass disruption in service and create a sense of urgency when those systems are down. Also, data stored in government systems are very attractive since you have information on constituents, on employees, payroll information, and lots of valuable details on people. And finally, financial constraints on local government budgets means that they spend much lower amounts on security than their counterparts in the private sector. According to an IC3 annual report, both the financial losses and the number of complaints have been growing steadily since 2014. And significant growth was seen between the years of 2017 and 2018, with almost $1.3 billion increase in financial losses and over 50,000 additional complaints. These attacks are becoming more vicious, more frequent. For the first time in history, cybercrime is now the most prevalent type of crime against businesses. There were 137 million new malware samples in 2018, and we saw over 25 new samples just in Q1 of 2019. In 2018, 93% of malware found was polymorphic, which means it had the ability to change its code to evade detection. $79,841. What is this number? This is the average cost of a cyber attack on a small business. But that doesn't tell the whole story because there are lots of additional damages and costs that aren't included in that number, such as embarrassment. How can you put a price tag on the embarrassment of being in the papers, on the news for being yet another attack? What are the costs that are added for protecting your employees if their data has been compromised? Things like buying credit monitoring for your staff. What about reputational damage? How does a data breach impact your economic development efforts? You think that big company that you've been courting to bring their plant to town is going to be really happy that that local government was compromised and could have put their data at risk had they been there? What about loss of voter confidence? Because you're not protecting their data or being able to adequately provide the services that you promised you could provide them. Then there's class action lawsuits and individual lawsuits and legal fees to handle a breach. And if you don't have good backups, what about the cost to replace that data, to rebuild it if it was locked or corrupted through ransomware? And finally, there's the real cost of downtime and lost productivity. How do you compensate for the time that employees can't work? Just in the last 18 months, these are examples of local, yes, Georgia counties and cities that have been attacked with ransomware. Everybody knows about Atlanta and has seen the headlines and the estimated cost of over $17 million in recovery from their attack in March of 2018. Some of you probably heard about the city of Winder that was hit for $320,000 in ransom. But what about Jackson County that was hit just earlier this year on March the 1st? They agreed to pay $400,000 in ransom to get their data back. But then they spent over 3 weeks with their systems still down, trying to recover and be able to provide services to their constituents. What was the total cost of that? So if it's so common that these attacks are happening, why aren't we hearing more about it? Well, first, it's extremely embarrassing to have to admit publicly that you were hacked. Sometimes you don't even know you've been hacked until you have a security assessment done and find out. Also, horrible PR. Do you really want your constituents and voters to know that you failed to protect their data? And then there's the legal ramifications, fines, lawsuits, legal fees. They can be so significant. So many of these incidents just stay hushed up. Let's take a quick look at the history of cybercrime. In the old days, cybercrime business was pretty simple. You bought a gun or a knife, hid out in a dark alley, and when someone walked by, you jump out and say, "Stick 'em up," and take their money. Startup costs and overhead were low, and if you didn't get caught, you'd be okay. But of course, just like any other business owner, criminals started thinking, how can I grow my business? Of course, technology answered that question. Trains came along, and instead of robbing one person at a time, you could rob 200 to 300 people at a time. And robbing trains was far more lucrative catch than robbing individuals because these trains were crossing remote areas where there weren't organized police forces. Second, individuals who were wealthy enough to afford a train ticket were worth robbing, and they were rounded up and sitting in a single location. Today, thanks to advancements in technology and an ever-increasing trend of storing financial and personal information on third-party cloud platforms, the new train robbers are cybercrime related. Think about it. If a criminal wanted to rob 100,000 people at once, they couldn't do it the old-fashioned way. Today, all is needed is a hack into a single large platform, and they can use advanced technology to instantly rob millions. And they are, as you can tell, by the increasing number of attacks that made the news every day. Remember the JP Morgan credit card hack? It wasn't just one person stealing a credit card. It was one person or a small group of people who stole tens of millions, 80 million to be exact, personal credit cards, and 7 million small and medium business credit cards in one fell swoop. Think about that. Never in the history of mankind has any one person or small group of people been able to rob so many so quickly and in one fell swoop. What about Equifax? Everyone remember the Equifax hack? Well, your reaction may have been, yeah, so what? They got my credit history. Big deal. How are they actually going to hurt me with that? Well, pretty simple. Cyber criminals use this data to open new credit cards in your name, take out loans. They can even steal your tax return by filing a return with your name and your information on it. They can also create highly targeted phishing scams. Because remember, they know everything about your purchasing history. They know who you have credit cards with, where you spend money with, where you've lived. They can use these to target you to gain access to your bank account, your email, your computer, and your network. And then there was the Tinder hack. Now, I'm not the morality police. I'm just the IT guy trying to keep your data and information safe. You know, you may not be one that has information out there on these sites, but what about your employees? What about other officials? Cyber criminals can access a site like this, steal information on your sexual preferences, online dating history, transgressions, and interactions, and then use that to blackmail you unless you pay large ransoms. Nobody wants that kind of exposure. So what's motivating these criminals? This is a business. But it's a business that doesn't have the overhead, taxes, or problems that most legitimate businesses face. There are businesses online who sell hacking software and tools, complete with a help desk and customer support, and who even guarantee that if the software doesn't allow you to get into at least X number of businesses and PCs, then you can get your money back. This stuff can make even the most novice of technical people into cyber criminals. Why do they do it? Well, credit card details can sell for $2 to $90 depending on how frequently and how recently that credit card had been used. iTunes account can sell up to $8 a piece. Physical credit cards for $190 a piece. One successful ransomware hit for a business is worth between $2,500 and $50,000 per incident. Even an amateur can expect to make up to $80,000 per month selling and stealing data. This is seriously big business. So what's enabling these criminals to make this kind of money and to do it? Well, first, it's an easy business to set up. There's low to no overhead to run it. There are hundreds of websites out there and exploit kits with how-to information and services being sold to hackers. And guess what? They're not even just being sold. There are tons of free sites out there with exact step-by-step how-tos and even videos showing you how to hack a system. Today's malware programs, they run on autopilot. They use artificial intelligence and bots to infect networks and to continue to change and evade detection. They don't need a guy sitting there at a computer hacking one account at a time. They can do thousands and hundreds of thousands of it. And then with the Internet of Things, everything is connected, from your computers to your mobile devices to your home appliances, your Amazon Echoes, even your cars in some cases. These make lots of targets and gain easy access to gain into your systems. It's so prevalent that the FBI is overwhelmed with cases. So while your incident may seem big to you, reality is you're just one in a million to them. You may very well just be on your own. And the dark web makes it nearly impossible to catch them. And there are no country borders. So what is this dark web thing? The dark web is a separate, hidden part of the World Wide Web that's concealed, and it's not indexed by conventional web search engines. And this is where the cyber criminals operate, where they buy, sell, and trade credentials and credit card information and other financial data. Cyber criminals use it because they can operate anonymously. It is estimated that the dark web is 550 times larger than the World Wide Web, and it's growing. And you might be thinking, well, I'm just a small city or county. I'm not Atlanta or Baltimore, so nobody would want to hack us. Wrong. First, these larger governments have very sophisticated security systems in place. They are not easy to hack. Therefore, if they are getting hacked, getting into your organization is a cakewalk, which is why you are a bigger target than these larger institutions. The prize might not be as big, but you are far easier to rob than larger institutions, making you a prime target. And since cyber criminals have automation tools, they can make a large sum of money simply targeting a few hundred or 1,000 small government entities. Since we started tracking ransom attacks in 2013, there have been 170 local governments that have fallen victim, and that number is growing. We've already had 23 known attacks in 2019 against city and county governments. So why are they targeting you? Well, most small organizations are low-hanging fruit given the lack of security. Laws safeguarding business bank accounts aren't as strong as they are for personal accounts. And small organizations typically don't have the sophistication to encrypt the data. So once these attackers gain access to a system, it's really easy to grab that data and then sell it. So just holding you ransom and stealing your money is not the only motivation. They can quickly and easily sell stolen constituent and employee data that they swipe from your systems. They can also use your server for sending emails, processing stolen credit cards, or hosting illegal software and content. Imagine how embarrassing it would be to have a government server hosting child pornography unbeknownst to you. Some of them are just in it for fun, for bragging rights, to say they hacked. They took this one for ransom. Some of them are doing it to make a point. They disagree with the U.S. governmental policies and they're attacking small governments in retaliation for that. What if your constituents found out how casual you were keeping their personal information safe? Do you think they'd shrug it off? Or would maybe they use their opinion when they vote in the next upcoming election? The financial and reputational ramifications, not to mention the aggravation, business interruption, and anxiety this brings, is being routinely underestimated. Here's a little known fact. Most fire alarms are sold to people who've had a fire after they've lost everything. Most home security systems are sold the same way, after someone has already violated their home, stolen things, shaken up their sense of security, and upset their wife and kids. All of these people never thought that would happen to me, which is why they didn't have an alarm system on the house to begin with. Remember the story about Jackson County? Guess what? 1 month after their systems were compromised, they hired a firm to assess the security and shore up issues that they found. Good decision, just a month too late. One single breach can produce hours of extra work for your already overburdened employees. Days, if not weeks of downtime, irate constituents, cash flow disrupted by down systems, inability to service constituents and provide mandatory services, possibly even the inability to make payroll if your payroll account's compromised and the funds are gone. And all of this will end up in your office. Let's talk about the 3 biggest threats to your organization right now and what you can do to stop them. The number 1 threat to your business today is your employees. Now, even good employees make mistakes. They delete files, they click on that phishing email, or they could innocently log into a compromised Facebook page. All unintentional, but all with potentially dire results to your organization. Employees also often use free and unsecure file sharing applications and cloud applications to share confidential information just because they don't know better. And because they don't know there's a problem with it, they don't bother to let you know. How exposed are you today? And then with more people bringing their own personal devices from home and using them for work, the perimeter that you have to protect from your network today is huge. And it gives so many more opportunities for hackers to gain access to your systems and your data. And then let's talk about disgruntled employees or vendors. When you terminate an employee or terminate a contract with a vendor, do you know exactly all the systems that they've had access to while employed? Do you have policies and procedures in place to terminate that access immediately? What about data that they've had access to? Did they have a Dropbox account that they had personal information on? They have data stored on their iCloud account so they can access it from their phones? These all represent significant risk to you as an employer and as a government entity. Shadow IT, that's a term to define IT systems that are outside of your control and not within your primary organization, such as Dropbox, iCloud, or other storage systems that employees may use to put data out for good intentions so that they can access from different devices, but still causing a risk to you and to your systems and other employees. How many of you have mobile phones? How many of you use them to access your company email? What about your employees? Do they access company email from their mobile devices? How many people have their phones protected with a password? What about multi-factor authentication, such as biometrics with thumbprint readers, or even facial recognition? Are those mandated for anyone accessing organization data? How about a kill switch that wipes data from these systems if they're lost or stolen? One laptop is stolen every 53 seconds. An estimated 70 million smartphones are lost each year, and only 7% of those are recovered. If your laptop is lost or stolen, 80% of the cost of that is going to be on covering from a data breach. The number two biggest threat to your organization is malware or ransomware. Now, we've talked about ransomware and malware a lot in this webinar, but did you realize 350,000 new malware threats are being released each and every day? These malware attacks rose over 79% in just the last year alone. Think about that. You can't just think a simple firewall and antivirus is enough these days with the proliferation and sophistication of these attacks. Only having a firewall and antivirus is like trying to stop a tank with a squirt gun. Who's ever heard of Verne Harnish with Gazelles Inc.? Verne is recognized worldwide as one of the leading authorities on entrepreneurism and small businesses. Yet even he is not immune. Recently, during a conference with leading Russian CEOs and entrepreneurs in Moscow, his email was hacked while he was using a public network. The hackers gained access to his email and information about his organization and was able to then access his bank and steal over $400,000. You would think, well, I can just sue the bank because they didn't take care of my data. Actually, all the bank has to do is prove that they took reasonable measures in order to secure your data and that you didn't. Then, not only will you not get your money back, but you may very well be responsible for having to pay your bank's legal fees. We had a customer who was working with a larger local government, and that local government, one of their employees had their email compromised. Then the hacker was able to find emails from my client with invoices for services rendered. The hacker called the person whose email he had compromised, pretending to be the controller for my client, and said, we're changing our financial systems over, and instead of paying by check as you usually do, we need you to pay by ACH going forward. I'll email you with information on the ACH transaction so you can set up and change it in your systems. Well, then the hacker sent an email, supposedly from the controller. However, the email address, the domain, had two letters switched. Very easy to do. They were able to quickly register a domain that looked almost exactly like my customer's domain. Good enough to fool the person at the county government who they were communicating with. Fortunately for this county government, the bank that they used was being very diligent and looked at this transaction and said, wait, there's something a little off here, because they realized that the transaction was going to put money into a personal account versus a business account. So they stopped it. Good thing for that government, because that $1.1 million ACH transaction could have been devastating. They still would have owed the money to my client, and nothing my client did cause this to happen. They would have just been out that money. Pretty scary. Let's talk about a few other true stories of cybercrime from our experience. A few months ago, on a Monday morning, I got a call from a small roofing company. They had been referred to us through a CPA firm that they use and we provide services for. It seems that over the weekend, they realized something was going on with their new server, and they couldn't access any of the files that they had been able to access earlier in the week. Our technician went on site first thing Monday morning and found that over 1 million files on that server had been encrypted. Well, he immediately unplugged the server and started an investigation to figure out what was going on and how this could have happened. In talking with the owners, we found that they had recently purchased this server from Dell. And in the purchase transaction, they signed up to have Dell provide professional services to set up this new server for them and transfer their data from their old server. Well, during the setup process, the Dell technician, being diligent about what he was doing, asked the owner, said, hey, do you ever work from home? And the owner replied, well, I would love to, but we really don't have anything in place to do that. The technician said, hey, I can help you with that. So this technician commenced to work with the owner to make changes to their firewall and open up ports for remote desktop protocol, or RDP. so that the owner could just connect up from home and access the server. Unfortunately for them, this created a hole that cyber attackers could also utilize. What the technician didn't do was bother to look to ensure that other security protocols were put in place on that server, such as account lockouts or password complexity, or disabling default accounts such as the administrator account that every server ever created ships with. Well, these attackers took advantage of that, and in exactly 30 days from time that server was placed online, the hackers were able to compromise it using a brute force attack where they just tried millions of combinations of passwords until they found something that worked for that administrator account. Once they gained access to the server, then they had about 20 days to just poke around the network and see where the data was, find all the ins and outs, find the important data. And then 20 days in, they started the encryption process. Well, because of the volume of files, it took about 10 days before it was really evident to the customer that they'd been attacked. Once they found out, the ransom was set at over $20,000. Fortunately, we were able to save that money for this customer because we found an older backup on the old server. We were able to restore it, but they still lost 2 months of productive work that hadn't been backed up. A terrible lesson to have to learn. Another one, we took over a local government's IT about a year ago. It all started with an offer for a network assessment. We went in, did the assessment, found quite a few issues with password policies and expired user accounts and things like that. But the most startling thing that we found was the fact that their finance server had been exposed to the public internet, all ports, not just RDP. Well, as we investigated, we found that the previous IT company, with good intentions, had been trying to give access to this finance server software to a number of remote sites for the government that needed to access the system. Well, they thought if we just exposed it, then we can install the client on those systems and they can directly connect. Unfortunately for them, so could the hackers. We found that hackers had compromised their SQL server, the database that contained all of their financial information, all of their payroll data, their employee data, social security numbers, account numbers, mailing addresses, dependent information. Tons of information had been exposed to these hackers. But they didn't stop there. The hackers, because of a misconfigured SQL instance, were also able to create scripts within SQL that were generating malware on systems throughout the network and further exposing those systems to hackers. Everything was done with great intentions. However, because this IT company didn't really understand security, they exposed this government to significant risk. How confident are you that your IT company understands cybersecurity to the point where they're really protecting all of your systems? When your organization falls victim to a cyber attack, depending on what happens, you can bet you will be blamed. There's no sympathy for businesses who get hacked, and you're wrongly labeled irresponsible or stupid. You may be questioned, possibly investigated, and they'll want to know, what did you do to prevent this from happening? You may need to notify all of your constituents that their data was exposed to cyber criminals. You also may have to notify your employees. You may have to pay for credit monitoring. This doesn't look good for any agency. And when the news gets wind of it, you can bet you'll be in the paper, you'll be on all the local stations, maybe even the Atlanta and Macon stations. Nobody wants that type of publicity. And then you're going to face significant costs for restoring that data. So how do you protect yourself? We're going to provide you with 3 simple steps that you can take today to help protect your organization and keep you from being the next headline. The first step is to perform a threat assessment. You need to understand what's lacking in your security implementation today. You need to know if your systems are truly being backed up and where you're exposed to risk. Once you have this assessment completed, then you need to create an action plan. You need to detail the steps of what you're going to do to fix and fill each of those holes. And then you need to implement it. The best plan is not worth the paper it's written on if you don't put in the processes to get it implemented. This will keep you from being an easy target. Now, once you've got that plan implemented and you've filled those holes, you can't stop there. Step 3 is going to be implementing an ongoing maintenance plan. We talked about how cybercrime is evolving, and this is an ever-growing and evolving threat. So you can't expect to put static controls in place and continue to meet the changes in these attacks. So you need an ongoing maintenance strategy that's going to stay ahead of the attackers. Well, here's some good news. The first step is absolutely free. Since you sat through this webinar and you stuck with me till the end, not only am I going to give you a free dark web scan, I'm also going to give you a free threat assessment. The assessment and dark web scan together have a combined value of over $1,650. Once we do this risk assessment, you will know if you and your employees' login credentials are being sold on the dark web, and I can guarantee you they probably are. Very few times have we done these assessments that we didn't find data floating around out there about you or your employees. We're also going to find out if your IT systems and data are truly secured from hackers, cyber criminals, rogue employees, and lost. We're going to give you a health score of your network to let you know areas that are outdated, unsupported, slow, problematic, or things that you need to look at for your implementation plan. And finally, we're going to let you know if your current backup would allow you to restore 100% of your data and be back up and running fast if ransomware were to lock all your files. In 99% of the networks that we reviewed, this was not the case. The dark web scan alone is about a $200 value. We're going to give that to you for free. Also, going to give you one free web-based training session for all of your employees on good password policy. We are so committed to helping you avoid being the next headline that we're willing to give this $250 value away for free so you can start today with protecting your network and your employees. And then we're going to give you a report of 7 simple things you can do today to help protect yourself from bank fraud. Now, there's a few things you need to know about this. First, there's absolutely no obligation to buy or do anything when you request the assessment. We will come in, perform the assessment, no problem. Now, regrettably, I can only extend this offer to 10 people this month due to the amount of time and money that it costs me to perform these assessments, to provide the training and manpower to go through and generate the reports for you. Finally, this is by application only. We can't help everyone. So we want to make sure that we're able to help you before we ask you to dedicate any of your valuable time. So go ahead and apply now so that you're on the list and you're in these 10 for this month. You can apply for the assessment by going to www.pinelandcogenis.com/cyberwebinar. I know you're extremely busy and there's an enormous temptation to discard this, shrug it off, worry about it later, dismiss it altogether. That is undoubtedly the easy choice, but the easy choice is rarely the right choice. This I can guarantee. At some point, you will have to deal with cybersecurity events. Hopefully, you'll be brilliantly prepared for it and experience only minor inconvenience at most. But if you wait and do nothing, I can practically guarantee this will be far more costly, disruptive, and devastating attack that will happen to your business. You spent a lifetime working to get where you are today. Don't let some lowlife thief operating outside the law in another country get away with taking that from you. And certainly don't hope your IT guy has you covered. Get the facts and be certain you're protected. So go to pinelandcogenis.com/cyberwebinar right now to apply. And again, only the first 10 are going to be able to take advantage of this. I thank you for your time today. I hope you've gotten some valuable information out of this webinar. And I truly look forward to talking with you soon and helping you to solve these cybersecurity problems in your network. Thank you and have a wonderful day.